She changed the locks while I was gone. Just like that. No warning, no call, no explanation. I stood on my own porch, my porch turning the key that no longer fit, listening to the quiet click of a deadbolt that answered more loudly than any words could. That lock said, "You're not welcome." That lock said, "This is no longer your home." But it was mine. God help me, it was still mine. The air was colder than I expected for late April. I'd only taken a weekend trip to Stillwater to visit my oldest friend, Margaret. She'd had a rough winter, lost her sister, caught pneumonia, nearly gave up. She needed me. And I thought I didn't admit it, then needed the break. A few nights of sleep without footsteps above me, without that sharp perfume of Christina in every hallway, without feeling like a stranger in the house I paid off 23 years ago. I'd called before I left. I'd left a note on the kitchen counter, too. Back Sunday by noon. Take care. C. Nothing dramatic. Just what a person says when she assumes she's still considered family, still has a place at the table, still owns the walls around her. I tried the key again. Same result. At first I thought maybe there'd been a break-in. Maybe someone had changed the lock for safety. But then I noticed the tiny white sticker near the handle barely visible in the morning light. Seculock installations. Friday 3:15 p.m. Friday, the day after I left. Not even a full 24 hours. I pressed the doorbell and waited. Nothing. Knocked, then rang again. Still nothing. My old hydrangeas, trimmed back by someone who clearly didn't understand them, stood like small skeletons by the porch steps. My mailbox still had the dent in the side from where Esteban hit it with a wiffle bat in 1991. The welcome mat, crooked muddy, still read "Home Sweet Home." Home. I took a step back, looked at the windows. Curtains closed. Silence inside. I checked my phone. No missed calls. No messages. I dialed Esteban. It rang 4 times, then voicemail. "Esteban, it's Mom. I'm back from Margaret's. I can't get in. The locks have been changed. I'm sure there's some misunderstanding. Call me, please." I hung up and waited. 5 minutes, then 10. Then I called again. Still nothing. After 20 minutes in the driveway, sitting in my old Civic hands, shaking not from cold but from disbelief, I drove around the block. Just in case. Maybe Esteban had gone out for milk. Maybe Christina had gone to the gym. Maybe this was all a mistake. But it wasn't. Because when I circled back, their car was in the driveway. The sleek black Lexus I'd helped them with when they hit a tight patch 2 years ago, parked neatly on the same driveway my husband Robert and I laid with our own hands the summer after we paid off the mortgage. I got out again. Knocked again. Rang again. Nothing. It was then, standing there in the wind, that it hit me. Not all at once. Not like a slap, but like cold water slowly creeping into your bones. This wasn't an accident. This was a decision. A boundary drawn by someone else in a house that was still legally and spiritually mine. I didn't cry. I wish I could tell you I did. That it all poured out in one clean, cathartic sob. But no, I stood still, let the hurt settle quietly like dust, and got. I need to tell you about this house. Because if you don't understand what it meant to me, you won't understand why losing access to it felt like losing my lungs. We bought it in 1974, Robert and I, with barely enough for a down payment and a toddler on my hip. It had avocado green appliances and rust in the tub, but the backyard faced west and the maple in the front yard lit up gold every fall. That was enough for me. The house had never been big. 3 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, low ceilings, popcorn walls I never got around to scraping. But it held more life than most mansions I'd ever seen. Esteban took his first steps in the hallway between the kitchen and the den, said his first word at the breakfast table. Up, reaching toward his father with both arms, grinning so wide we thought his face might split. Robert died on the porch. I don't mean that poetically. He died there on a Tuesday during his second cup of coffee. The Tribune folded in his lap just before 9. I came out with a piece of toast in one hand and my reading glasses in the other. By the time I noticed something was wrong, it was already too late. That was 12 years ago. I've lived alone since. Not because I wanted to, but because that's how it worked out. At first I expected Esteban would check in more. He did for a while, dinners every few weeks sometimes, with that eager tone in his voice, like he'd remembered something important. Then came the promotion, the commute, the shift in tone. He married Christina 3 years after Robert passed. A woman with sharp cheekbones, sharper words, and a job title that changed every quarter. She worked in branding, which seemed to involve a lot of slideshows and telling people how to make themselves look more expensive. She didn't like the house. That much was clear from the beginning. Said the kitchen was closed concept. Said the floors creaked like a horror movie. Said the place smelled like old fabric. She meant me. The first few years they lived in a sleek loft downtown, all chrome and echo. But when Esteban's company downsized and Christina's freelance contracts dried up, they needed a bridge. That was the word Esteban used when he called. Just until we figure out our next move, Mom. A few weeks, maybe a couple months. I hesitated. I did. But then he said, it would really help us out. And that was all it took. He could have asked me to sleep on nails and I'd have gotten the hammer ready. They moved in on a Sunday. 4 suitcases, 2 garment bags, a flat screen I didn't have a wall for. Christina didn't speak to me much that day. She was too busy directing Esteban where to put her desk, where to set the box with her air purifier, which room needed to be depersonalized first. Without asking, she didn't even look at me. Later that evening, I found my wedding album in the hall closet. It had been on the sideboard next to the lamp for 20 years. Esteban apologized. Sort of. She's just trying to make it feel livable, he said, scratching the back of his neck. It was already livable, I said. He smiled tightly. Yeah, but modern. That was the start. In the first week, they rearranged the living room. In the second, they replaced my coffee maker. By the third, I no longer kept milk in the fridge because Christina was plant-based and said the smell bothered her. I began to feel like a tenant in my own house. No, not even a tenant. A guest. She called me Carolina, not Mom. Not even Mrs. Delgado. Just Carolina, like I was the neighbor who let the dog bark too long. When I brought it up to Esteban, he waved it off. She's not big on formality. It's not formality, I said. It's family. But the truth was I'd let them stay. I'd made space. I'd cooked. I'd cleaned. I'd turned down the thermostat because Christina got migraines from dry heat. I stopped watching my mystery shows in the evening because she liked silence to meditate. I thought maybe, just maybe, this would bring Esteban closer, that we'd find a rhythm. But mostly I just found myself tiptoeing from room to room, carrying my quiet like a tray I was scared to drop. I remember the night I overheard them talking in the kitchen. She keeps leaving dishes in the sink, Christina whispered. She's used to her own way, Esteban mumbled back. It's cluttered. It's bad energy. She's trying. Well, trying's not enough. I stood on the other side of the wall, hands damp with soap, my own words swallowed back like bad medicine. I didn't sleep much after that, but still I stayed. I thought it was temporary, that soon they'd find their next condo move on thank me for my help and I'd get my home back. The one where I could wear my slippers in the kitchen and leave my puzzle half finished on the table. But time passed. Nothing changed. And then came Margaret's call. Carolina, I hate to ask. Margaret said, her voice barely above a whisper. But would you come for a few nights? I'm not doing well. Her sister had just passed. The funeral was over, but the grief was fresh, and she'd caught pneumonia that hadn't fully cleared. She was 76, lived alone, and I could hear the exhaustion in every breath. Of course, I said immediately. When do you need me? Whenever you can. I don't want to be alone right now. I looked at the calendar. I looked at the guest towels folded neatly in my bathroom, now Christina's. I looked at the way my slippers had been shoved under the couch. I'll leave Friday morning, I said. That evening I told Esteban and Christina over dinner, if you could call it dinner. I'd made chicken, but Christina had brought her own lentil bowl in a glass container. She ate with her phone propped against the napkin holder, scrolling. Margaret needs me for a few days, I said. I'll be back Sunday by noon. Esteban nodded absently. That's nice, Mom. Christina looked up briefly. Oh, that would be lovely. Get some fresh air, right? Change of scenery. Her eyes lit up. I didn't understand why then. Friday morning, I packed my overnight bag. Christina offered to drive me to the bus station. I declined. She hugged me anyway, lightly, politely. Take your time, she said. I didn't know what she meant until I came back. But I need to back up. Because something happened Thursday night that I didn't understand until much later. I'd gone to bed early, around 9. My room, the guest room now, was at the end of the hall. Theirs was the master, the one Robert and I had shared for 38 years. The walls were thin. Not thin enough to hear conversations, but thin enough to hear movement doors opening the rhythm of a house at night. Around 10:30, I woke to use the bathroom. As I stepped into the hallway, I heard Christina's voice. She was on the phone in the kitchen, speaking low, but not quite whispering. The kind of voice people use when they think no one's listening. I stopped. I'm not proud of it, but I stopped. She won't be here next week, Christina was saying. I'll get the locksmith in on Friday. Pause. No, she won't fight it. She's too passive. Another pause. Longer this time. I just want this house to feel like ours already. She's sweet, but it's suffocating. Every corner has her fingerprints on it. I can't breathe here. My heart pounded so loudly I thought she'd hear it through the wall. I stood frozen breath shallow trying to make sense of what I'd just heard. The locksmith. Friday. I didn't confront her. I didn't wake Esteban. I went back to my room, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at the dark window until morning. And when Friday came, I left as planned. I packed my bag, left my note on the counter, and drove to Stillwater, because I needed to know if I'd heard correctly. If they'd really do it. They did. Margaret lived in a small 2-bedroom house with pale yellow siding and a porch that sagged slightly on the left. She met me at the door, thinner than I remembered her face, gray with exhaustion. "You came," she said, and her relief was so palpable I almost cried right there. We spent the first day quietly. I made soup. She rested. We didn't talk much, just sat together in the kind of silence that only decades of friendship can hold without discomfort. But that evening over weak tea and toast, she looked at me carefully. "You're quieter than usual," she said. I stirred my tea. "Just tired." "Carolina." I looked up. Her eyes were sharp even through the fatigue. "What's wrong?" I opened my mouth to say nothing, but the word wouldn't come. Instead, what came out was, "I think they're planning to lock me out." Margaret set down her cup. "What in?" So I told her. About Christina's phone call, about the locksmith, about the way they'd slowly erased me from my own home piece by piece until I felt like a relic they were too polite to throw out but too annoyed to keep. Margaret listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "If your son goes along with this, he's not ignorant. He's complicit." The word hit me like a slap. Complicit. "I don't think he knows," I started. "Then he should. And if he doesn't stop it, that's a choice." I didn't sleep well that night. I kept thinking about what Margaret had said, about the word complicit, about the fact that I'd spent 2 years making excuses for Esteban's silence, convincing myself he just didn't notice. But he noticed. He always noticed. He just didn't care enough to stop it. On Saturday afternoon, I realized I'd left something at home, my bank statement folder. I always kept it in the drawer by my bed, except that wasn't my bed anymore. It was the guest room. And I'd been careless. I tried not to panic. It was just paperwork. But Christina had been asking questions lately. Subtle ones. "Do you have a retirement fund, Carolina? What's the property assessed at now? Have you thought about setting up a trust?" Questions that felt casual but landed heavy. I called the bank from Margaret's landline. Not to check my balance, I knew that by heart, but to make sure nothing had changed. That no one had tried to access anything. The woman on the phone was polite efficient. "Let me pull up your account, Mrs. Delgado." A pause. Keys clicking. "I do see a note here from yesterday. There was an inquiry about adding joint access to your primary account. We declined it because there was no authorization on file." My blood went cold. "An inquiry from who?" "It says here the request came from a phone number registered to," more clicking, "a Mrs. Cristina Reyes Delgado." The room tilted. I gripped the edge of Margaret's kitchen table. "Mrs. Delgado, are you still there?" "Yes," I managed. "Yes, I'm here. Can you freeze my account, all transactions? Nothing in or out without my direct approval." "Of course, I'll flag it immediately." When I hung up, Margaret was standing in the doorway. "They tried to access my bank account," I said, my voice hollow. Margaret's face hardened. "Then you're not going back there without a plan." We spent the rest of Saturday and all of Sunday morning making calls. Margaret, bless her, had a cousin who was a retired estate attorney. He agreed to see me Monday morning, but over the phone he gave me the basics. If the house is in your name alone, they can't take it. But they can make your life hell trying. You need to update your will, set up a power of attorney with someone you trust, not your son, and make it clear in writing that you're of sound mind. "They're going to say I'm not," I said quietly. "Christina's already been telling people I'm forgetful. Then we document everything. Bank records, medical records, a letter from your doctor if needed. We build a wall of proof so thick they can't punch through it." I thanked him and hung up. Margaret sat across from me, hands folded. You're not going back there to beg Carolina. You're going back to reclaim what's yours. I don't even know if I can get in. Then we get a locksmith, a better one than theirs. For the first time in days, I felt something shift. Not snapped, not broken, shifted, like a tectonic plate settling into a new position after years of pressure. I wasn't powerless. I'd just forgotten that I wasn't. Sunday morning, I woke before dawn. Margaret was already up coffee brewing. You ready? She asked. No, I said, but I'm going anyway. The drive back to Stillwater took 90 minutes. I made it in 75. My fingers gripped the wheel so tightly my knuckles went white. When I pulled onto my street, everything looked the same. Mrs. Kaminsky's red tulips pushing through the earth. The same wind chimes down the block. The same quiet Sunday stillness. And then I saw it. My house. The sign. Seculock Installations. Friday, 3:15 p.m., I pulled into the driveway. Their Lexus was there. I walked up to the porch, my key in hand, and turned it. Nothing. The lock didn't budge. It didn't even try. That's when I knew. Not suspected. Knew. They hadn't just changed the locks by accident. They'd done it on purpose. They'd planned it while I was packing, while I was saying goodbye to Margaret, while I was believing foolishly that family meant something. I knocked. No answer. I rang the bell. No answer. Their car was in the driveway. They were inside, and I was locked out of my own home. I stood there for several minutes just listening for footsteps, the creak of the stairs, maybe even laughter, but the house was silent, still. I walked back to my car and sat behind the wheel, not ready to drive. I checked my phone. No calls, no texts. I tried Esteban. Straight to voicemail. Esteban, it's Mom. I'm back from Margaret's. I can't get in. The locks have been changed. I'm sure there's some misunderstanding. Call me, please. I hung up and waited. 5 minutes. 10. 20. At 6 p.m., when the sun dipped low and the porch light flickered on automatically, I drove away. But not far. I parked 2 blocks down. I slept in the car that night, wrapped in the old travel blanket I kept in the back seat, a bottle of water by my side. I used the gas station bathroom in the early hours and bought a coffee just so they wouldn't ask questions. The clerk looked at me kindly. I must have looked like something out of a story he didn't want to hear. At dawn, I pulled around the corner and parked where I could see the house. That's when I saw her. Christina stepping outside in her silk robe holding the mug I'd given her last Christmas. The one that said Queen Bee. She didn't see me, but I saw her. She paused on the porch, glanced at the sky like she owned it, then turned back inside. And something inside me shifted. Not snapped, not broke, shifted. Like a plate of earth settling into a new place after years of pressure. I didn't honk, didn't call out. I just put the car in gear and drove away. But this time I wasn't running. I was going to fix what she broke. And I was going to do it on my own terms. The locksmith's name was Ernie, and he used to fix our screen doors back in the day. Short man, always wore suspenders and smelled like pipe tobacco even after he quit. Robert liked him, said he charged fair and never asked unnecessary questions. That's exactly what I needed. I found his number scribbled in the back of an old address book between Linda's pie crust recipe and pediatrician Dr. Cohen retired. I didn't think he still worked. I certainly didn't expect him to pick up, but he did. Ernie speaking. Hi, Ernie. It's Carolina Delgado, Robert's wife, well widow now. Silence, then a warm chuckle. Well, I'll be. How's Robert? My throat tightened. Gone 12 years now. He went quiet a moment. Sorry to hear that. He was a good one. He was. I swallowed hard. Ernie, I need locks changed. He didn't ask why, just asked when. Today, I said. Early. I'll be there at 7 sharp. I gave him the address. I didn't say my house. I didn't have to. I parked 3 blocks away and walked up just before 7. The morning air was crisp, the kind that makes your lungs ache if you breathe too deep. The grass was damp. My knees ached, they always did when the weather turned, but I stood tall. Ernie was already waiting by the porch toolbox in hand. He looked older. We all did. His hair had gone completely white, his face more lined, but his eyes were the same steady knowing kind without being soft. He looked at the new lock, then at me. Looks different, he said, nodding at the sleek handle. Not your style. It's not, I replied. He didn't smile, just went to work. I stood beside him, arms crossed against the cold, as he removed the modern hardware, clean soulless like everything Christina touched, and replaced it with a brass deadbolt that clicked with weight and memory. The kind of lock that said home, not property. When he was done, he handed me 2 new keys. "You want a third?" he asked. "No, 2's enough." He packed up his tools, then looked at me with something between curiosity and respect. "You all right, Carolina?" I met his eyes. "I am now." He nodded once, asked for nothing more, and walked to his truck. By the time he pulled away, the sun was just beginning to break through the gray. It was 7:32 a.m. I opened the front door to my own house and stepped inside. It smelled different. That was the first thing I noticed. Not bad, just different. Lavender detergent. Something floral and expensive. The kind of scent that belongs in a boutique hotel, not a home where people have lived and loved and grieved for 47 years. My photos were still missing from the sideboard. The blanket I'd crocheted last winter was folded neatly on the armchair, as if it had been placed there just for looks, not for warmth. The remote control sat perfectly aligned on the coffee table. Even the magazine's Architectural Digest kinfolk were stacked with geometric precision. This wasn't a home anymore. It was a showroom. But the floor still creaked under my step right there by the hallway entrance, where Robert had once dropped a hammer and left a small dent we never fixed. The clock above the fridge still ticked half a beat too slow. The sun still lit the east wall of the kitchen like a quiet promise. The bones of my life were still here. They'd just been dressed in someone else's clothes. I walked through slowly, not with anger, but with the careful attention of someone taking inventory. What had been moved? What had been hidden? What had been erased? The kitchen, my red kettle was gone, replaced by a chrome electric one that looked like it belonged in a laboratory. My wooden spoons, worn smooth from decades of stirring, were in a box under the sink next to the trash bags, as if they were waiting to be thrown out. The living room Robert's recliner was gone. I already knew that, but I hadn't noticed they'd also taken down the cross-stitch my mother made, the one that said "Love grows best in little houses." It had hung by the window for 30 years. I found it in the hall closet, face down under a stack of neutral throw pillows still in their packaging. I carried it back out and hung it exactly where it belonged. Then I went to the master bedroom. They'd changed everything. My quilt, the one my grandmother made with the pattern of blue windmills, was gone, replaced by a duvet in that lifeless shade of beige people call grege. My lace curtains, the ones I'd sewn by hand one winter when Esteban was small, were gone too. In their place, blackout panels. Heavy, severe, blocking out every scrap of morning light. A diffuser sat on my nightstand, puffing out some kind of mist. Eucalyptus, maybe. I unplugged it. Then I went to the closet. And that's when I felt it, not anger, not even sadness, just a cold, crystalline clarity. My clothes were boxed, labeled in Christina's handwriting. Seasonal. Donate. Archive. Archive. As if I were already gone. As if I were a chapter that had ended and they were just sorting through what was left. I stood there for a long moment, my hand resting on the box marked Donate, and I thought about the women I knew who'd lost themselves this way. Not all at once, but piece by piece, until one day they woke up and didn't recognize the person in the mirror. I wasn't going to be one of them. I carried the boxes out to the garage, my boxes, my clothes, and brought them back in. It took 2 hours to set things as they were. Not perfectly. Just enough. My quilt back on the bed, my curtains replaced, my clothes in the closet where they belonged. Then I turned to the spare room where they'd been sleeping. Christina's shoes lined the baseboard like little soldiers. Her suitcases, leather monogrammed, sat at the foot of the bed. Her silk robe hung on the door. Her cosmetics covers the dresser in neat rows, serums, oils, creams with names I couldn't pronounce. One by one I carried everything outside. Not thrown, not dumped. Placed, folded where needed, lined up neatly along the edge of the porch like a display window, her shoes paired together, her suitcases stacked. Even her robe was draped carefully over the railing silk, catching the morning breeze. By the time I finished, the sun was higher in the sky. A jogger slowed as he passed, eyebrows raised. I gave a small wave. He waved back, uncertain, then kept running. I went inside and brewed tea. My tea from the tin I'd kept hidden behind the cereal boxes. I sat in the kitchen, steam rising from my cup, and I waited. While I waited, I did something I should have done months ago. I went to the small desk in the corner of the living room, the one where I'd always kept important papers. Bills, taxes, the deed to the house. It had a lock, but I'd never used it. There was never a reason to. This was my home. I trusted the people in it. I opened the bottom drawer, and that's when I found it. A folder, cream-colored, professional, the kind lawyers use. On the tab, written in Christina's handwriting, property transfer, C. Delgado. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a document, a quitclaim deed, for this house, the house Robert and I had bought with our wedding gift money and paid off penny by penny over 30 years. The deed was already filled out. My name in the grantor section, Esteban and Christina's names in the grantee section. All the legal language about relinquishing all rights, title, and interest in the property located at. The only thing missing was my signature. There was a sticky note attached also in Christina's handwriting, have her sign after the trip, while she's emotional. E will witness. I read it 3 times. Then I took out my phone and photographed every page. The document, the note, everything. Then I put it back exactly as I'd found it and closed the drawer. My tea had gone cold. I didn't care. I made another cup, my hands steadier now, and I sat at the kitchen table with my phone in front of me. I didn't call Esteban, not yet. I needed him to come to me, to see what I'd done, to understand that I knew. At 9:11 a.m., the doorknob rattled. Then came the knock. Sharp, impatient. "Carolina," Christina's voice was high, thin. "There's something wrong with the lock." I sipped my tea. More knocking. Harder now. Carolina opened the door. "Why are my things on the lawn?" I didn't move. Then came the voice I'd once lived for. "Mom, are you inside?" Esteban. His voice uncertain, slightly panicked. I stood, slowly walked to the door and opened it. His face was pale. Hers was red. I looked at them both, then down at the bags and suitcases lined neatly on the porch. "They're not on the lawn," I said quietly. "They're on my lawn." Christina started first stepping forward, her voice sharp. "Carolina, this is completely uncalled for. We can't get into my house," I corrected. "You can't get into my house." She blinked. We live here." "No," I said. "You stayed here. There's a difference." Esteban stepped forward, one hand raised like he was calming a spooked animal. "Mom, okay, I think there's been a misunderstanding. We didn't mean to change the locks while I was gone." I finished for him. He stopped. His mouth opened, then closed. "I stood outside this house for 20 minutes on Sunday." I said, my voice even measured. "I knocked. I called. I rang the bell. You were inside. Your car was in the driveway. And you didn't answer." Silence. "I slept in my car that night," I continued. "At 74 years old, I used a gas station bathroom at 2 a.m. I bought coffee I didn't want just so the clerk wouldn't think I was a vagrant." Esteban's face crumpled. "Mom, we didn't, you did," I said. "You knew exactly what you were doing." Christina crossed her arms. "This is ridiculous. We were protecting the property. You were gone and you thought what?" I asked, looking at her directly. "That I wouldn't come back, or that I wouldn't fight when I did?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. I stepped aside slightly, but didn't open the door wider. "You can come in now," I said, "to collect anything else you need. You have 15 minutes. Esteban stared at me. "Where are we supposed to stay?" I raised my eyebrows. "You didn't seem worried about where I'd sleep." "That's not the same." "No," I said. "It's not, because this is my home, the one I paid for, the one where your father died, the one you grew up in, and you locked me out of it like I was a stranger." "Mom." 15 minutes, I repeated. They moved past me without speaking. Christina walked quickly, brisk heels, tapping on the wood floors like gunfire. She made straight for the bedroom, yanked open the closet, and began packing what was left. I watched her fold her silk robe like a hotel staffer, mechanical cold, not a glance around. Esteban lingered in the hallway, hands in his pockets, looking lost. "I just don't understand why you're being so rigid," he said finally. I turned toward him slowly. "You don't understand why I no longer want people who betrayed me to live in my home." He flinched at the word betrayed. "I invited you in during a hard time." I continued, my voice quiet but firm. "I made space. I gave you warmth. You gave me silence and exclusion." "We never excluded you, Esteban." I said his name like a full sentence. "Do you remember how many times I said I didn't feel like myself anymore, like I was disappearing in my own house?" He didn't answer. Do you know how many of my things I found in boxes labeled donate, in her handwriting? Still nothing. You said nothing, I continued. Over and over again, that silence that was your choice. His jaw tightened. She was just trying to make the place more comfortable. For her, I said. Not for me. Never for me. Christina appeared in the hallway, a suitcase in each hand, her face tight. Are you going to let him talk? She asked, looking at me like I was a receptionist blocking her path. Or are you just going to keep making speeches? I looked at her for a long moment. I found the quitclaim deed, I said. The color drained from her face. Esteban's head whipped toward her. I kept my eyes on Christina. In the desk drawer, already filled out. My name as the grantor, yours as the grantees. The only thing missing was my signature. Mom, I don't know what you're talking about, Esteban started. There was a note, I continued, pulling out my phone. In her handwriting. I showed him the photo. Have her sign after the trip while she's emotional. E will witness. Esteban stared at the screen, his face going from pale to gray. Christina, he said, his voice strangled. What the hell is this? She set down the suitcases. It was just a precaution. A precaution? His voice rose. You were going to have my mother sign over her house. It's not like that. Then what is it like? I asked quietly. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you had a plan. Change the locks while I'm gone. Make me feel unstable, emotional. Then present me with papers and tell me it's for my own good. Christina's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Esteban turned to her, and for the first time I saw something in his face I hadn't seen in years, clarity. You told me she was getting forgetful, he said slowly, that she needed help managing things, that we were doing her a favor. Christina's eyes darted between us. She is forgetful. No, I said. I'm not. But you needed me to be, didn't you? So you started telling people. So when you finally made your move, no one would question it. Esteban sank against the wall, his hand over his mouth. I tried to add myself to her bank account last week, Christina said, defensive now. The bank wouldn't let me. They said there was no authorization. Because there isn't, I said. Because it's my account. Well, someone needs to manage your finances. I've been managing them for 74 years, I said. I think I can handle it. Silence fell over the hallway, heavy, suffocating. Then Esteban spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I swear I didn't. You didn't know, I asked. Or you didn't want to know. He closed his eyes. Because there's a difference, Esteban. There's a difference between being lied to and choosing to believe a lie because it's easier. Christina picked up her suitcases again. I don't have to stand here and be accused. No, I said. You don't. The door's right there. She looked at Esteban, waiting for him to defend her, to say something. He didn't. She walked to the door, then turned back. This isn't over. Yes, I said calmly. It is. She left, heels clicking down the porch steps, dragging her suitcases behind her, like artillery she'd lost the war with. Esteban didn't follow. He stayed in the hallway, staring at the floor, his hands hanging uselessly at his sides. I need you to understand something, I said after a moment. He looked up. I don't hate you, I continued. I don't even hate her. But I won't be erased. Not in my own home, not in my own life, not by anyone. His eyes filled with tears. I let her do all of it. The boxes, the lock, the godmom, how did I not see it? Because you didn't want to, I said gently. Because it was easier to let her take control than to set boundaries. And because maybe a part of you thought I'd always just accept it. He wiped his eyes roughly with the back of his hand. What do I do now? That's not my question to answer, I said. But you start by leaving, and by figuring out who you want to be, because right now I don't recognize you. He nodded slowly, miserably. Can I call you? Not for a while, I said. I need time, and you need to figure out what you actually want, not what she wants, not what's easy, but what's right. He grabbed his jacket from the hook by the door, the one he'd hung there 2 years ago, and never moved. At the threshold, he turned back one more time. I love you, Mom. I know, I said. But love isn't enough when it doesn't come with respect. He left without another word. I stood in the hallway for a long time after the door closed. Not crying, not celebrating, just standing. The house felt different now. Not lighter exactly, not emptier, just still. The way a house feels when it's been holding its breath and finally exhales. I walked through each room, slowly touching things. The sideboard, the wall where my mother's cross-stitch hung again, the kitchen counter where I'd made 10,000 meals. Everything was where it should be. Not perfect, just right. My phone buzzed. A text from Esteban. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I don't know how to fix this." I didn't reply. Another text a minute later. "Christina's saying you're not well, that you're confused." I told her to stop. I turned my phone face down on the counter. I made another cup of tea and sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Esteban had done his homework, where Robert and I had paid bills and planned vacations and argued about what color to paint the bathroom. The sun was higher now, streaming through the window, warming the worn wood. I realized I was smiling, not because I'd won something, but because I'd remembered something I'd forgotten, that I didn't need permission to exist in my own life. That afternoon, I called Howard Leonard, the estate attorney Margaret's cousin had recommended. His office was in an old building downtown, the kind with frosted glass doors and creaky elevators. The waiting room smelled like leather and old paper, and the receptionist, a woman about my age with kind eyes, offered me coffee without asking if I wanted any. Howard came out 10 minutes later, tall, thin, with glasses that sat low on his nose, and a suit that had seen better days but was still pressed. "Mrs. Delgado," he said, offering his hand. "I'm glad you called." We sat in his office surrounded by shelves of thick legal books and framed diplomas that meant nothing to me but probably meant something to his clients. I told him everything. The locks, the boxes, the quitclaim deed, the bank account, all of it. He listened without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad in handwriting so small I couldn't read it upside down. When I finished, he set down his pen and looked at me over his glasses. "Mrs. Delgado," he said carefully, "you're not the first person to sit in that chair with this story. Elder financial abuse is more common than people think, and it's almost always family." "I don't want to press charges," I said quickly. "I just want to protect myself." "I understand, and we can do that. But you need to understand if they were willing to go this far, they may not stop just because you said no." I thought about Christina's face as she left, the way she'd said, "This isn't over." "Then we build a wall," I said. "A legal one." He smiled slightly. "That's exactly what we'll do." We spent the next 2 hours going over everything. He took copies of the quitclaim deed photos. He drafted language for an updated will with specific provisions that made it clear I was of sound mind and that any changes to my estate had to go through him. "We'll also set up a durable power of attorney," he said, typing rapidly. "Someone you trust to make financial and medical decisions if you're ever unable to. Who do you want to—" I thought about it. "Margaret," I said, "my friend in Stillwater." "Good. Not family is often better in cases like these." He also advised me to get a letter from my doctor confirming my mental competency, just in case they try to claim otherwise. "They already are," I said. "Christina's been telling people I'm forgetful." His jaw tightened. "Then we make sure no one believes her. We document everything. Medical records, bank statements, this meeting. We create a paper trail so thick that if they try to challenge anything, they hit a brick wall." By the time I left his office, the sun was starting to set. I felt exhausted, but I also felt something I hadn't felt in months, protected. That night I slept in my own bed for the first time in 2 years. Not the guest room bed, not the couch, my bed, in my room, with my quilt and my pillows and my lace curtains that let in just enough moonlight. I thought I'd lie awake replaying everything. The confrontation, Esteban's face, Christina's anger. But I didn't. I fell asleep within minutes and I slept through the night without waking once. When I woke the next morning, the house was silent. Not the tense eggshell silence of the past 2 years. Just quiet. The comfortable quiet of a place that knows itself again. I made coffee. Real coffee from the beans I liked in the red kettle I'd bought 30 years ago and rescued from under the sink. I sat at the kitchen table in my nightgown and slippers, no makeup, hair unbrushed, and I didn't apologize to anyone. Because there was no one to apologize to. For the first time in so long, I was alone in my house, and it felt like coming home. The first few days were strange. I kept expecting to hear footsteps upstairs, to smell Christina's perfume in the hallway, to feel that constant low-level tension of someone watching, judging, cataloging my mistakes. But there was nothing. Just me and the house settling back into each other like old friends who'd been apart too long. I cleaned. Not frantically, not with anger, just methodically, room by room, reclaiming each space. I found things I'd forgotten about a photo of Robert and me at the Grand Canyon, tucked behind a stack of Christina's design magazines. My mother's recipe cards in a box marked Misk. My favorite coffee mug with the chip on the handle shoved to the very back of the highest shelf. I brought them all back out, put them where they belonged. I also found things that didn't belong to me, a stack of real estate listings, all for houses in up-and-coming neighborhoods. A folder labeled Renovation Budget with plans to modernize my kitchen, tear out the oak cabinets, replace them with white. Notes in Christina's handwriting, after property transfer, aim for spring listing. I threw them all away. On Wednesday, my phone rang. Esteban. I let it go to voicemail. Mom, please, I just want to talk. I know I messed up. I know please, call me back. I deleted it. On Thursday, he tried again. And Friday. By Saturday, the calls stopped. Instead, a letter arrived. Handwritten. His handwriting the same chicken scratch he'd had since grade school. I held it for a long time before opening it. Mom, I don't know if you'll read this. I wouldn't blame you if you didn't. I've been trying to figure out how everything went so wrong, how I let it. And I keep coming back to the same thing. I was scared. Scared of failing. Scared of not being enough. Scared that if I didn't have success, the right job, the right wife, the right house, then I didn't have anything. And Christina, she made it seem so easy, like she had all the answers, like if I just let her handle things, everything would work out. But I see now what that cost. It cost you. It cost us. I don't expect you to forgive me. I'm not even asking. I just need you to know that I see it now. All of it. The way I let her erase you. The way I stayed silent when I should have spoken up. The way I chose easy over right. I left her. I'm staying with a friend from work. I don't know what happens next, but I know I can't be the person I was. The person who let his mother sleep in her car. I love you, Mom. I always have. But I know now that's not enough. And I don't know how to fix what I broke. I'm sorry. Esteban and I read it 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and put it in the drawer with the rest of the important papers. I didn't cry. I didn't call him back. But I didn't throw it away either. Because maybe someday there would be a conversation worth having. But not today. Today I had a house to reclaim, a life to rebuild, a self to remember, and that was enough. The days that followed had a rhythm I'd forgotten existed. I woke when my body wanted to wake, not when an alarm told me to, or when I heard Christina's blender screaming to life at 6 a.m. I made breakfast without checking if the smell would bother anyone. I left dishes in the sink, not many, just 1 or 2, and didn't feel guilty about it. I read in the living room with the lamp on, even though it created glare on Christina's precious neutral walls. I watched my mystery shows at full volume. I left my puzzle half finished on the dining table for 3 days straight, and nobody moved it. Because nobody was there to move it. The house began to breathe again. Or maybe I did. It was hard to tell where one ended and the other began. On Tuesday, I went to the grocery store. Not the organic market Christina preferred, but the regular one on 5th Street where I'd shopped for 40 years. The cashier, Maria, smiled when she saw me. Mrs. Delgado, haven't seen you in a while. How have you been? Better, I said. And I meant it. I bought the things I liked: butter, not plant-based spread. Coffee with actual caffeine. A roast chicken from the deli counter because I didn't feel like cooking. Ice cream mint chip, the kind Robert used to love because I could. When I got home, I unpacked everything slowly, putting each item exactly where I wanted it. The butter on the second shelf where I could reach it easily. The coffee in the canister on the counter, not hidden behind almond milk and adaptogenic powders. I made myself a sandwich with real mayonnaise and ate it standing at the kitchen counter looking out at the backyard where the lilacs were just beginning to bloom. This was my house, my food, my life, and it felt like putting on a coat I'd forgotten I owned, worn in all the right places, comfortable mine. That week I started remembering things about myself, small things mostly, things that had been buried under 2 years of trying to be smaller, quieter, more convenient. I remembered that I used to sing while I cooked. Not well, but loudly old songs from the 70s that Robert would harmonize with from the living room. So on Wednesday, I put on Carole King and sang along to I Feel the Earth Move while I made spaghetti off-key and entirely unbothered. I remembered that I used to keep plants, lots of them, but Christina said they attracted gnats and created visual clutter, so I'd let them die one by one until the house felt like a magazine spread instead of a home. On Thursday, I went to the nursery and bought 6 plants. African violets for the kitchen windowsill, a peace lily for the living room, herbs for the porch. I repotted them with my hands in the soil dirt under my fingernails, and I didn't care that I was making a mess. I remembered that I used to have friends, real ones, not just Margaret. Women from the library volunteer group, from church, from the neighborhood book club I'd stopped attending because Christina said it was basically just wine and gossip. On Friday, I called Linda Kowalski, who'd invited me to book club probably 15 times before I'd stopped answering. "Carolina?" She sounded shocked. "Oh my God, I thought you'd died or something." I laughed. Actually laughed. "Not yet." "Well, we meet next Tuesday, 7 p.m. Bring wine if you want, but honestly, we're just happy to see faces. You coming?" "I'll be there," I said. When I hung up, I realized I was smiling. A real smile, the kind that uses muscles I'd forgotten I had. 10 days after the confrontation, my phone rang at 8 p.m. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Mrs. Delgado." A woman's voice, professional, crisp. "This is Jennifer Chen from Seculock Installations. I'm calling because we received a complaint about a recent service at your address, and I wanted to follow up." My stomach dropped. "A complaint?" "Yes, ma'am. A Mrs. Cristina Reyes Delgado called our customer service line claiming that locks were changed at your property without proper authorization. She's requesting we provide documentation of who ordered the service." I sat down slowly. "And what did you tell her?" "Nothing yet. That's why I'm calling. Our records show that you, Carolina Delgado, the homeowner, authorized the service and paid in full. But she's claiming you have dementia and that the service was performed under fraudulent circumstances." My hand tightened on the phone. "I see. Mrs. Delgado, I need to ask you directly. Did you authorize Ernest Morrison to change the locks at 4 and 12 Maple Street on Monday, April 24th? "I did," I said clearly. "I am the sole owner of that property. I am 74 years old, and I am of sound mind. Mrs. Reyes Delgado is my daughter-in-law, and she changed the locks on my home without my permission while I was out of town. I was locked out of my own house. Mr. Morrison restored my access to my own property." Silence on the other end. Then, "I see. And you're comfortable with me documenting this conversation?" "Please do," I said. "And if Mrs. Reyes Delgado calls again, you can tell her that any further contact regarding my property will be considered harassment, and I will be speaking to my attorney." "Understood, Mrs. Delgado. I'm sorry you've had to deal with this." "Thank you for calling," I said. "Sid." When I hung up, my hands were shaking. Not from fear, from rage. She wasn't done. She was going to keep pushing, keep trying to make me look unstable, unreliable, incompetent. I called Howard Leonard's office and left a message. He called back within an hour. "We need to move faster on the documentation," I said. "She's escalating." "I'll have everything ready by end of week," he said. "In the meantime, document every contact, every phone call, every attempt. We're building a case for harassment if we need it." On Monday, I went to see Dr. Patel, my primary care physician for the past 15 years. She was a small woman with steel gray hair and the kind of direct manner I appreciated. No coddling, no assumptions. "Carolina," she said, looking up from her computer. "What brings you in, Tim? You're not due for a checkup until June." "I need a letter," I said, documenting my mental competency. Her eyebrows rose. "Excuse me," I explained the situation. "All of it. The locks, the quitclaim deed, Christina's claims that I was forgetful." Dr. Patel's face hardened. "Has she made these claims to anyone official? Any agency?" "Not yet, but she's trying." She turned back to her computer and began typing. "I'll run a standard cognitive assessment right now. Mini mental state exam. Takes about 10 minutes. Then I'll write you a letter so detailed that if she tries to claim you're incompetent, she'll look like a fool." The test was simple. Remembering words, drawing shapes, answering questions about the date and location. I scored a 30 out of 30. "Perfect score," Dr. Patel said, printing the results. "I'm also going to note in your chart that you're physically active, socially engaged, managing your own finances, and demonstrating 0 signs of cognitive decline. If anyone requests your medical records, they'll see that clearly." She handed me the letter. It was 2 pages single-spaced with her medical credentials listed at the top and her signature at the bottom. "To whom it may concern, I am writing to confirm the mental and physical competency of my patient, Carolina Delgado, age 74. I read it twice, feeling something loosen in my chest. "Thank you," I said quietly. She squeezed my hand. "You're one of the sharpest women I know. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Thanksgiving came and went without a knock. Not from Esteban, not from Christina, not from anyone who once called this house theirs. And I'll tell you something, it was fine. I didn't make turkey. I didn't drag the folding chairs up from the basement or polish the silverware or spend 2 days preparing food for people who wouldn't appreciate it. Instead, I made butternut squash soup just enough for 2. Margaret had driven down from Stillwater that morning, her color better, her breathing easier. We ate at the kitchen table with cloth napkins and candles, and we talked about everything and nothing. Her garden, my book club, the ridiculous plot of the mystery novel we'd both tried to read. "This is nice," Margaret said, looking around. "The house feels like itself again." "It does," I agreed. After dinner, we watched It's a Wonderful Life on the couch under my crocheted blanket, and when Margaret fell asleep halfway through, I didn't wake her. I just turned down the volume and sat there grateful for the kind of friendship that doesn't ask for anything but presence. She left the next morning with a Tupperware of soup and a promise to call when she got home. "You doing okay?" she asked at the door. "Really okay." "I am," I said, and I meant it. The package arrived on a gray Monday in early December. Small, brown paper. No return address, but the postmark read Chicago Christina's hometown. I stared at it for a long moment before bringing it inside. I opened it standing at the kitchen counter, not sure what I expected. A legal threat, another document. Something cruel inside was a small blue velvet pouch, and inside that, a locket. Gold-plated delicate, the kind you buy for sentiment more than value. I opened it carefully. One side held a photo. Me, much younger, maybe 45, 50, holding Esteban on my hip. Both of us laughing at something out of frame. I remembered when it was taken 4th of July, 1999. Robert had made a joke about my potato salad, something stupid, and Esteban and I had cracked up. The other side was blank. No note, no message, just the locket. I closed it and set it on the table next to the sugar jar where Esteban's letter still rested. I didn't cry, but I sat with it for a long time. Because gestures are only worth as much as what follows. And silence, no matter how pretty, isn't the same as change. 3 weeks later, another letter arrived. Handwritten again, thicker this time. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity got the better of me. "Mom, I know you haven't responded to any of my calls or letters. I don't blame you. I'm not sure I'd respond either. But I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear it, even if you don't want to talk to me yet." I left Christina. Not just moved out, left. Filed for separation. I'm staying with a friend from work while I figure out what's next. I didn't do it because you asked me to. I did it because I finally saw what you'd been trying to tell me for 2 years, that she wasn't just strong-willed or organized. She was manipulative, controlling. And I let her be because it was easier than standing up to her. After you kicked us out, I started going through our shared documents. Mom, she had a whole plan. Not just the quitclaim deed, she had conversations with a real estate agent about listing the house in 3-6 months. She'd already picked out staging furniture. She'd calculated the profit split. She told me it was for our future, that you were declining and we were helping you transition. But when I asked her why she never talked to me about it before moving forward, she just got angry. Said I was being ungrateful and controlled by you. That's when I realized she never saw you as a person. She saw you as an obstacle, and I let her treat you that way. I don't know how to fix this, Mom. I don't know if I can. But I'm trying to figure out who I'm supposed to be. Not who she wanted me to be. Not who you raised me to be. But who I actually am. And whoever that is, I know he needs to start by saying I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. If you're willing to talk, I'll listen. No expectations, no demands, just listening. I love you. Esteban. I read the letter 3 times. Then I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I picked up the phone and called him. He answered on the first ring. "Mom, I got your letter," I said, silence. "Then thank you for calling." "I'm not ready to see you yet," I said. "But I'm willing to talk. Once a week, on the phone. We'll see where it goes. Okay, he said, his voice thick. Okay, thank you. Esteban. Yeah. This doesn't fix what happened. You understand that, right? I do. Good. I'll call you next Sunday. Same time. I'll be here. I hung up before either of us could say a book club became my favorite night of the week. Every Tuesday at Linda's house, 6 women between 62 and 78 drinking wine or not eating cheese, definitely, and discussing books we'd supposedly read, but mostly just talking about our lives. They were all at different stages. Linda was recently divorced, navigating dating apps with a hilarious mix of horror and curiosity. Joan had just lost her husband and was learning to travel alone. Patricia was dealing with her own ungrateful daughter, who kept borrowing money and never paying it back. When I told them my story, not all of it, just the outline, they didn't gasp or offer empty platitudes. They nodded knowingly, like they'd all been there in one way or another. My son asked me to co-sign a loan once, Patricia said. I said no. He didn't speak to me for 6 months. Best 6 months of my life. Everyone laughed, but it was the kind of laughter that comes from pain that's healed enough to be funny. You did the right thing, Linda said, refilling my wine. Too many of us let our kids walk all over us because we're afraid of losing them. But you can't lose someone who never really saw you. I carried those words with me for days. Christmas was quiet. Margaret invited me to Stillwater, but I declined. Not because I was sad, but because I wanted to be here in my house with my tree, a small one, real with lights that blinked unevenly, and ornaments I'd collected over 50 years. Esteban called on Christmas morning. We'd been talking every Sunday for 6 weeks now. Short calls awkward at first, but getting easier. Merry Christmas, Mom, he said. Merry Christmas. I sent you something. Should arrive tomorrow. You didn't have to do that. I know. I wanted to. We talked for 20 minutes. He told me about his new apartment, small but sunny. About therapy, which he'd started. About the job he was interviewing for, something with better hours, less travel. He didn't ask to come over. Didn't ask for forgiveness. Just talked. And that was enough. The package arrived on the 26th. Inside was a framed photo, me and Robert on our wedding day, young and impossibly hopeful, standing in front of the church with rice still in our hair. There was a note. I found this in a box at Christina's. She was going to throw it out. I thought you should have it. I hung it in the hallway right next to the photo of Esteban's first day of kindergarten. In February, on a Sunday afternoon, there was a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. Margaret was in Stillwater. Book club wasn't until Tuesday. I opened the door to find Esteban standing on the porch, alone. No Christina, no luggage. Just him in a coat too thin for the weather, holding a single potted plant, a peace lily. Hi, Mom, he said quietly. Hi. I know we've just been talking on the phone, but I was hoping... Could I come in just for a little while? I hesitated, then stepped aside. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd sat 1,000 times before. But it felt different now. Not tense exactly, just careful. I'm not here to ask for anything, Esteban said, his hands wrapped around the mug of tea I'd made him. I just wanted to see you, to see the house. I nodded. It looks good, he continued, glancing around. Like it did when I was a kid, like home. That's because it is home, I said. Mine. I know. He looked down at his tea. Mom, I need to tell you something. Okay. The divorce is final. Christina and I signed the papers last week. I didn't know what to say to that. She fought it, he continued. Tried to claim I was having a breakdown, that you'd manipulated me. But in the end, the lawyer saw through it, especially after I showed them the quitclaim deed and the real estate emails. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it despite everything. He shook his head. Don't be. I should have done it 2 years ago. Hell, I should never have married her. But I was so desperate to prove I was successful, that I'd made it, that I ignored every red flag. We all make mistakes, I said gently. Yeah, but mine cost you your home, your safety, your peace. It didn't cost me my home, I corrected. I still have it. What it cost me was trust, and that's going to take time to rebuild. He nodded. I know, and I'm not asking you to trust me again, not yet. But I want you to know I see it now, all of it. What I let happen, what I didn't stop. Do you? I asked. Or are you just saying what you think I want to hear? He looked up, met my eyes. I see it. I'm in therapy twice a week. and my therapist asked me to make a list of all the times I chose Christina over you. It was 7 pages long, Mom. 7 pages. My throat tightened. And the worst part is I can't blame all of it on her. She was who she was. But I knew. Deep down I knew what was happening, and I let it happen anyway. We sat in silence for a long moment. Then Esteban spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. "What do I have to do?" he asked, "to earn your trust back?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. "Time," I said finally. "Consistency. Show me that this version of you, the one who sees me, who respects me, isn't just temporary, that it's not just guilt." "How long?" "I don't know. Could be months, could be years, could be never." He flinched at that last word. "But yeah," I continued, "if you're willing to put in the work, not for a reward, not because you want something from me, but because it's the right thing to do, then maybe we can find our way back to each other." "I'll do it," he said immediately. "Esteban." I reached across the table, put my hand over his. "I need you to understand something. I love you. I always have. But love isn't enough when it doesn't come with respect. And for 2 years you didn't respect me. You didn't see me as a person with needs and boundaries. You saw me as a resource, a place to stay, a problem to manage." Tears slipped down his cheeks. "I know. And if we're going to have a relationship moving forward that has to change, not just in words, but in actions, tell me what you need," he said. "Tell me how to do this." I took a deep breath. "First, you don't get a key to this house. Not yet. Maybe not ever. You come when you're invited and you leave when I ask." He nodded. "Second, you don't ask me for money. Not a loan, not a gift, not just this once. If you need financial help, you figure it out on your own." "Understood." "Third, you don't make decisions about my life without asking me first. Not where I live, not how I spend my money, not what's best for me. I'm 74, not 7, and I'm perfectly capable of managing my own affairs." "I know you are." "And finally, you show up. Not just when it's convenient. Not just when you need something. You call on Sundays like you've been doing. You remember my birthday. You ask how I'm doing and actually listen to the answer." "I can do that," he said. "I will do that." I looked at him for a long moment, this man who used to be my little boy, trying to see if I believed him. "Okay," I said finally. "Then we'll try." Esteban stayed for an hour. We didn't talk about anything heavy, just life, his new apartment, his job search, my book club, the plants I'd bought. When he stood to leave, he paused at the door. "Mom?" "Yeah." "Thank you for giving me a chance." "Don't thank me yet," I said. "Prove to me it's worth it." He smiled a sad, small smile and nodded. After he left, I sat on the couch for a long time, the house quiet around me. I didn't know if this would work, if he'd follow through, if we'd ever get back to something resembling a mother-son relationship. But I knew this: I'd set my boundaries. I'd said what I needed, and I'd meant it. The rest was up to him. Spring came slowly that year. The lilacs bloomed late, the tulips even later. But when they finally opened, they were more vibrant than I remembered, deep purples and bright yellows and reds so rich they looked painted. Esteban called every Sunday. He didn't miss a single week. The calls got longer, easier. He told me about his new job, less pay than before, but better hours, better boss. He told me about his apartment, how he'd painted it himself, chosen his own furniture for the first time in his life. "No Greg," I teased. He laughed. "Not a single shade." In March, he asked if he could come for dinner. "I'll cook," he said. "I've been taking classes." I said yes. He showed up with groceries and a smile, and he made chicken parmesan, not good but edible, and we ate at the kitchen table like we used to. He didn't ask to stay, didn't overstay his welcome, just hugged me at the door and said, "Same time next month." Same time next month. I agreed. In April, on what would have been Robert's 80th birthday, I opened the locket Christina had sent. I still didn't know why she'd sent it. An apology, a peace offering, guilt. It didn't matter. I took the small photo of 12-year-old Esteban, the one from the box in Christina's things, and slipped it into the blank side. On the left, me holding my son as a child, both of us laughing. On the right, my son at 12, gap-toothed and hopeful, standing in front of the house we'd built together. A reminder of what was, and maybe, just maybe, what could be again. I didn't wear the locket. but I kept it on my dresser where I could see it when I woke up. In May, Margaret called with a proposal. Remember that train trip I mentioned National Park seniors discount you and me? I remember. Well, I booked it. We leave in June. 2 weeks, 6 states, 0 husbands or children or obligations. UNT. I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. I'm in. We left on a Tuesday. Esteban drove me to the train station, helped me with my luggage, hugged me goodbye. Have fun, Mom, he said, and take lots of pictures. I will. I'll call you Sunday, if that's okay. It's okay. As the train pulled away, I watched him standing on the platform, waving, getting smaller and smaller until he disappeared entirely. And I felt something I hadn't felt in years, free. Not free from him necessarily, but free to be myself, to make my own choices, to live my own life without constantly measuring it against someone else's expectations. The train picked up speed and Margaret clinked her plastic cup of wine against mine. To us, she said. To us, I agreed. By the time fall came again, things had settled into a new rhythm. Esteban came for dinner once a month, sometimes twice if I invited him. He brought groceries, cooked, cleaned up after himself. He asked about my life, my book club, my garden, my friends, and he actually listened. He never asked about the house, never asked about my will or my finances, never hinted that he was owed anything. And slowly, carefully, I began to trust him again. Not all the way, not blindly, but enough. One Sunday in October, he showed up with a small box. What's this? I asked. Open it. Inside was a key. Brass, simple, newly cut. It's for my apartment, he said. I'm not asking for one to your place. I know that's not how this works, but I wanted you to have one, in case you ever need somewhere to go. Or just in case. I held the key, feeling its weight in my palm. Thank you, I said quietly. No, Mom, thank you for not giving up on me, for giving me a chance to do better. I put the key on my key ring right next to the one for my own front door. 2 keys, 2 homes, 2 versions of family, one old, one new, both fragile, both worth protecting. It's been a year now since the day I stood on my porch, unable to get into my own home. A year since I slept in my car and wondered if I'd lost everything. A year since I learned that the people you love can hurt you the most, and that you can survive it anyway. The house looks different now. Not dramatically, but in small ways. The plants have grown. The paint is brighter. The silence is comfortable instead of suffocating. I host book club here now every other month. 6 women crowded around my dining table, drinking wine and laughing too loud, and talking over each other about books we may or may not have actually finished. Esteban comes when he's invited. He brings flowers sometimes or bread from the bakery I like. He sits at the kitchen table and tells me about his life, and I tell him about mine, and we're learning to be 2 separate people who happen to love each other. He's not forgiven, not completely, but he's trying, and that counts for something. Last week he asked if he could bring someone to dinner. Who? I asked carefully. Her name is Amy. She's a teacher. We've been seeing each other for a few months, and I'd like you to meet her, if that's okay. I hesitated. Does she know about what happened? She knows everything, he said. I told her before we even went on a first date. I didn't want to hide it. And she said if I could recognize what I did wrong and work to be better, then I was worth taking a chance on. I smiled. I think I like her already. They came on a Sunday. Amy was in her 40s with kind eyes and an easy laugh. She brought homemade pie and complimented my garden and didn't try too hard. Over dinner, she told me about her work teaching 2nd grade and her own mother who'd passed away 3 years before. Esteban talks about you a lot, she said, about how strong you are, how you taught him what boundaries mean. I glanced at Esteban. He looked down at his plate, but he was smiling. I'm not sure taught is the right word, I said. They said. More like reminded him. Well, whatever you did, I'm grateful, Amy said, because the man I'm dating now is nothing like the man he described being a year ago. After they left, I stood on the porch and watched them walk to his car. He opened her door for her. They laughed about something. They looked happy, and I felt something I hadn't expected: hope. Not for me and him to go back to what we were. We couldn't. That version of us was gone, broken beyond repair. But maybe we could build something new, something smaller, quieter but real. Maybe that was enough. I'm writing this on a Sunday evening in November, sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of tea and the window cracked open just enough to let in the cold. The house is quiet. The kind of quiet I used to be afraid of, but that I've learned to love. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if Esteban and I will ever be truly close again. I don't know if Amy will stick around or if he'll mess it up or if he'll keep doing the work. But I know this. I am Carolina Delgado. I am 75 years old. I own my home free and clear. I have friends who see me a son who's trying and a life that is entirely unapologetically mine. I'm not invisible. I'm not a footnote. I'm not just someone's mother or widow or burden. I'm a whole person, and I fought to remember that. So if you're reading this and someone has made you feel small in a room you built with your own hands, don't wait for the door to open. Don't wait for them to remember who you are. Stand up, dust off your chair, and start walking. You were never meant to be just a footnote. You're the whole damn story, and it's not over yet.